Hello, welcome back to One to One with Sheriff Sesker. Today I have a very important guest and a good friend of mine, Sheriff Mike Lewis from Wacomico County. We're going to talk about some important issues today, but before we get to that, Mike, let's find out a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself. I know you were a highly decorated Maryland State Trooper. You fifth term as the Sheriff of Wacomico County, and you also served as the past president of the Maryland Sheriff's Association.
Yes, sir.
Please tell us some more about yourself, Mike.
Well, first of all, Sheriff, thank you for having me on the show. I'm honored to be on the show, especially here in Anne Arundel County, because I spent many, many years working in Anne Arundel County, Prince George's County, and the Baltimore County area as a Maryland State Trooper. Came on the job in 1984. I had, as you mentioned earlier, a pretty good career with the state police. And as you well know, back in the 80s and 90s, we were battling a huge epidemic here in the United States, and that was a crack epidemic. Mm-hmm. And as a Maryland State Trooper, I was charged with uniting a group of men and women together to try to interdict the flow of drugs coming into and through the state of Maryland. Back then, there were a lot of federal monies and state monies being dedicated to fight the crack epidemic that had affected so many communities and really decimated our communities across the state. And we started forming interdiction teams on known arteries throughout our state to interdict large shipments of drugs. What we didn't anticipate is all the violence, quite frankly, that came along with that. People who were being stopped on traffic stops who were smuggling 7, 10, 12, 15 kilograms of cocaine from New York back down to Maryland or to points further south. What they feared more than anything else, obviously, is being caught, and a lengthy prison term that came along with that. And when we started interdicting these large shipments of cocaine, it came with a heavy toll on the deaths of police officers and our troopers. And we had multiple fatal shootings down on the eastern shore of Maryland, where I'm from, including the murder on October 17th, 1995 of Trooper First Class Eddie Plank. Eddie was a 28-year-old trooper. He was the proud father of a 7-month-old baby girl. He had a young wife at home, and he had gone to work on a Monday night at 11 o'clock. We had played racquetball at the Merritt Athletic Club in Salisbury, and he'd gone to work at 11 o'clock that night after we had played racquetball. And at 1:09 a.m., he would stop his first vehicle of the night after doing some paperwork from a case the previous night. At 1:09 a.m., a little over 2 hours into a shift, he would stop a Dodge Shadow, a small four-door red and colored Dodge Shadow with North Carolina plates traveling southbound. There were 2 occupants inside that car, and as Eddie stood next to the driver's door of the vehicle talking with the driver pulled a .45 caliber semi-automatic handgun from under his left leg and shot Trooper Plank in the face. Trooper Plank was hit just to the left of the bridge of the nose, and a bullet would take out the back of his head. Again, he would leave behind a young wife and a 7-month-old daughter. That was a wake-up call for me. And then 13 weeks later on that same stretch of highway with another North Carolina car, they were headed down to North Carolina with dope. I would find myself in a similar situation and would shoot and kill a guy on the side of Route 13. That was a huge wake-up call for the Maryland State Police because we realized then just how dangerous drugs had become, not only in the state of Maryland, but throughout the nation. And as a law enforcement officer charged with being on the front line, protecting our communities, serving our communities, and trying to interdict 7, 10, 15 kilograms before it got on the streets of Maryland, we had a very dangerous job. And it came with a price. And at that time, I had been on the job as a Maryland State Trooper about 11 years, and I was seriously reconsidering another vocation.
Really?
Yes, I was.
Now let me say this. I had the pleasure of sitting in one of your classes. I was a young narcotics detective at the time.
Yes,
and
sir.
I sat in one of your classes, and you showed us all about the hidden compartments and things like that. And it was an eye-opener for me because I did not know the seriousness of the business that I was in at that time. You know, but thanks to your class, it helped me in my career. I ended up staying for about 5 years and then became a supervisor and a commander of Narcotic Enforcement Division. But what I fear right now is, because we're getting so relaxed and we're legalizing some, marijuana and stuff like that, that the seriousness of, this epidemic, drugs and stuff, people are beginning to take lightly. Now, do you still feel that the danger is still there, and that we still need to be on this front line dealing with these issues with drugs and stuff like that?
I feel more strongly about it today than I've ever felt.
Okay.
And as a law enforcement executive like yourself, we are daily recipients of a daily shooting report that comes out through the Maryland Coordinated Analysis Center. And as I read that daily shooting report every day, every evening, oftentimes in the morning, I look at all the similarities in these shootings. The overwhelming majority of those shootings are in Baltimore City, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County's had an uptick
Right.
of fatal shootings. But in the overwhelming majority of those shootings, not only is the suspect armed, but oftentimes the victim's armed. And when they take the victim and oftentimes the suspect, who has also sustained gunshot wounds, to our University of Maryland Shock Trauma Unit, or any hospital trauma center on the shore or Western Shore, those individuals almost always have marijuana in their pockets.
Yeah.
Not fentanyl,
Right.
not crack, not cocaine, it's weed.
We.
Marijuana, contrary to popular belief, is not only a very highly addictive drug, but it's the most preferred drug out here today.
Okay.
And I have seen firsthand, I'm in my 40th year of law enforcement, I've seen firsthand the dangers of marijuana. Now, I am the first one to say, if one is using marijuana for medicinal purposes, I support that 100%. 100%. If you truly believe in your heart and soul it has medicinal value, and I believe it does in certain circumstances, I believe you should be allowed to have that prescribed to you, and you should be allowed to consume it. However, I think it should be in a tablet form. Right. I think it should be in a capsule form. I mean, we can certainly, and we do, press tablets all day long for any other kind of drug. Why can't we do it for marijuana?
Right.
I should not, and you should not, and our families should not be subjected to the powerful odor of weed coming out of the car sitting next to us at a traffic light, or when we're walking downtown with our grandkids or our children. Someone should not be subjected to that horrible aroma of weed.
Right.
Some people enjoy that smell. The skunk weed that I'm smelling today is hydroponically grown marijuana.
Okay.
It's not homegrown weed with an average THC content of 7 to 9%. This is hydroponically grown marijuana with an average THC content today between 77 and 91%.
Okay.
So the THC content today, THC being the chemical ingredient in marijuana that gives you the high, is greater now than it's ever been.
Okay.
So consequently, whatever weed you're smoking today has a much more powerful effect on you than marijuana had 30, 40 years ago when I was in high school.
Okay.
So the legalization of marijuana has absolutely exacerbated the crime issue in Maryland.
Okay.
Even though it's been legalized, it's done absolutely nothing at all to stem the flow of crime.
Okay.
It's increased the flow of crime because the black market is greater now for marijuana than it's ever been. And I said that when I testified in opposition for multiple years, several consecutive years in Annapolis, that the legalization is not the answer. You can tax it and you can legalize it all day long, but the black market will always sell it to our consumers at a much lower price and a much greater purity level than what our government can regulate it and sell it for. So it's done nothing but exacerbate the problem.
So it looks like if you go through the legal means to get marijuana, and once that effect starts, it loses, it wears down, that highness, now you may say, well, let me try this black market. It'll give me that effect I once had. I'm still trying to find that effect.
Exactly, and you're going to buy it a lot cheaper on the black market than you're going to buy it in the dispensary in your community. We've got one dispensary in Salisbury, Maryland. I don't care what time of the day I go by there, they are lined up around the building.
Really?
They're lined up around the building, absolutely. And that's clear every time I ride by there, but it's also created a number of issues.
Okay.
The other businesses that surround this dispensary, their parking places are being consumed every day by those going to the dispensary.
Okay.
So it's created a lot of issues for me. It's created issues for the Salisbury police.
Right.
We've responded to domestics. We've responded to hit and run accidents there. People arguing all the time, and we have to respond to try to be the peacemakers and say, okay, but I'm sick and tired of these people parking in my parking lot. My own customers can't get in my parking lot because of that dispensary next door. So it has created a lot of issues. And this is a large dispensary. It's the only one in Wycomico County. And again, it's just exacerbated our issues.
Okay. Now, you hit on something, the violence associated with this, and this is the main reason why we're here today. You lost a deputy. You know, I know you have strong feelings about that, especially dealing with the state's attorney's office. You know, can you first tell us about the deputy and what he meant to your agency?
Well, Glenn Hilliard was an Eastern Shore boy, originally from New Jersey, relocated to the Eastern Shore to attend college at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which is historically black college. My deputy, black deputy, incredible man. He wasn't just a deputy. He was a rock star.
Okay.
You know, I've said it many times. Some guys come to work every day and do what's mentally expected of them and nothing more. Glenn Hilliard was my rock star. He had worked for me for 10 years, but he'd also worked for a couple of smaller agencies before he came to the Wycomico County Sheriff's Office, such as the Ocean City Police Department, the Crisfield Police Department, the Berlin Police Department. I didn't recruit Glenn Hilliard. Glenn Hilliard came to me because I don't like to pull police officers from other agencies. We're all truly competing for the same candidates. And Glenn was a great deputy in Berlin, but his wife would later tell me he wanted to come work for me. He liked my stance on crime. He knew that I dislike drugs with a passion, and I still do. I don't think anything good can come out of drugs. I have family members that are addicts themselves. I've seen what it's done to my siblings. I've seen what it's done to my mom and dad. And I love life. I don't need anything to get me high. I'm high on life every day I come to work. It's like having a front row seat to the greatest show on earth every day I come to work. I enjoy my job. Glenn Hilliard was of that same mindset. And when he came to work for me, Glenn quickly displayed an unusual level of talent, and I wanted to tap that talent. He became first of all, a rock star patrol deputy on the road. Was making a lot of criminal arrests, and they were solid cases.
Okay, good.
And then he expressed an interest in going back into the criminal investigation division because he showed that he liked conducting long-term investigations. Now, road patrol can't always conduct long-term investigations because they're running from call to call. And Glenn wanted to conduct larger, more complex long-term investigations. He came back into the criminal investigation division and proved that he could do any and everything just as well, if not better, than the detectives back there, and became a rock star detective. Glenn was also an electronics whiz. If you were having problems with your iPhone right now, and I was having problems with mine, during our interview, he could take our phones in the back, he could dismantle them, fix the problem, have them ready for you and I, and we walked out that door this afternoon. Glenn was an incredible guy. He was always repairing iPads for deputies at the office, iPhones. Now, these are items that you and I would take somewhere and say, man, I have no idea what's wrong with his phone.
I do that now.
Glenn said, leave it to me, I can take care of it. And he could take it completely apart. And he was also my primary drone operator. I have a number of drones in Wycomico County. We send drones up primarily on barricade situations, on lost children, lost Alzheimer's patients. We had a drone up earlier this week for a homeless woman that we believe has been likely murdered somewhere in my county, and we used drones this week. And then we went up in helicopters for 2 days. But Glenn was the guy who loved the drones. Consequently, I had a business owner that was quite frankly impressed with Glenn Hilliard, his demeanor, the way he carried himself. She said, I want to buy him a drone. And she bought us a $5,000 drone.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And that had been ordered and was delivered 2 days after Glenn was buried. Glenn had gone to work on a Sunday night. Glenn was married, the proud father of 3 children. Glenn was still living at home, not just living at home, but very active in his children's lives. Glenn was very active in his church, Lighthouse Church of God on Centepuxet Road over in Berlin. That was pastored by Glenn's father, Reverend Theo Hobbs, and who an exceptional man in and of himself. He's another whole chapter of exceptionalism in my book, his father-in-law. And Glenn had been to church Sunday morning. He had been teaching his son Trenton, who was 13 years old, how to run the AV equipment at church. He said, Trenton, you need to know how to do this. And of course, Glenn, being a New Jersey boy, named his son Trenton.
Oh, okay.
And he named his beautiful 16-year-old daughter Jersey.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
Jersey was 15 years old when Glenn was killed. She's
Okay.
16 today. And just as beautiful as her mother. Just an incredible, beautiful family. Just really an incredibly beautiful family. So Glenn went to work Sunday afternoon after church at 3 o'clock and was working. And we had a call that had come into the office of a man that was wanted in 4 different jurisdictions. This guy had been an absolute thorn in our side. He was burglarizing businesses. He was burglarizing homes, not just in Wicomico, but down in Somerset County, over in Worcester County. He had been convicted of a drug case over in Worcester County and was back out of jail over there. But his conviction came on the heels of a probation before judgment sentence that he received in Baltimore City just months earlier, where he had armed robbed a McDonald's in Baltimore City of $1,146, $1,146 at gunpoint. At gunpoint.
Now, do me a favor before you go any further.
Sure.
Because I know there are some people watching. Explain what probation before judgment is.
The suspect had armed robbed a McDonald's at gunpoint, actually pointed the gun at the clerk in McDonald's, and which is as serious as it gets.
Oh, yeah.
You are threatening to execute someone
Right.
if they don't turn over the money. And he robbed that clerk of $1,146 and received something called probation before judgment. He was found guilty, but they struck the guilty verdict and gave him what's known as PBJ, probation before judgment. He walked out of the courtroom. He didn't serve any time at all. He didn't serve any time at all.
Yeah.
And this is a little scrawny, blonde-haired kid covered with multiple tattoos that, quite honestly, wanted to be a little thug,
Right.
acted like a little thug. At the time of Glenn's homicide, this kid was only 20 years old and had already had 29 interactions with law enforcement.
So now here's a question for you, and you I'm sure you can't answer it. All of these interactions with law enforcement, and he does this,
Yes.
produces a gun,
Absolutely.
and he still gets a PBJ.
Because he wasn't held to account as a juvenile, he is tried as an adult in Baltimore City for the armed robbery, gets probation before judgment, violates that probation before judgment, but there was never a violation order formed and or petitioned against him. He violated the order, but no one did anything about it. Meanwhile, he's breaking into multiple businesses in Somerset County, and he's stealing guns during these break-ins, including an AK-47. He also stole a 9mm handgun with a laser sight on it, with an extended magazine. We're looking for this guy, but he's literally not staying at one location for a few hours in some cases just a few days before he would wear his welcome out and people realized we can't hold this guy in our house.
Right.
And he was moving from place to place. We received a tip on a Sunday night that the man you're looking for can be located at a playground down in Pittsfield, Maryland. Now, Pittsfield, Maryland is a small town.
Right.
It's got one traffic light in it.
Okay.
And Glenn and another deputy went down to Pittsfield in an attempt to locate this individual. And by the cameras on different businesses, you can see Glenn and this other deputy hitting all these different areas, including the playground
Okay.
where he was supposedly located. They didn't see him. We had another call come in and said he's at this apartment complex. Glenn goes to the apartment complex, doesn't see him. Glenn leaves. But Glenn, being a former task force officer of a U.S. Marshals team, was a fugitive hunter. He enjoyed hunting for wanted individuals.
He wasn't giving up.
He wasn't giving up. He wasn't giving up. The other deputy remained in the area, but Glenn remained on the hunt. And Glenn went back to this area and spotted the suspect standing under a stairwell. And as Glenn pulled into the parking lot, in his marked Wicomico County Sheriff's Office Tahoe, the suspect started quickly walking away. as is clearly evidenced by the body-worn camera worn by Deputy Glenn Hilliard. Glenn accelerated, got parallel next to the suspect, ordered him to halt, and as Glenn's putting the vehicle in park, the guy takes off on foot. Glenn was considerably faster. Glenn was considerably more athletic. Despite having his uniform on, his body armor on, all his, think about all these accoutrements around your gun belt.
Right.
Magazine holders, extra ammunition, handcuffs, aspeton, pepper spray, holster, fully loaded gun. Glenn Hilliard was able to quickly catch up to this guy. Glenn had just been trained 3 weeks earlier in a taser. Now, a taser is something that's considered an intermediate weapon. Back in my day, patrolling, we know this guy's stealing guns.
Right.
We know he stole an AK-47. We knew he stole a 9mm with a laser sight on it. We knew he had been an absolute menace to society and was a thug all over the lower Eastern Shore. And we were looking for him. Back in the old days, any police officer would have had their gun out chasing that man.
I agree.
100%, Sheriff. We would have had our guns out chasing that man.
Right. We, the training was different. We did not have, like you said, all of the things. We didn't have the taser.
Didn't have a
we didn't
taser.
have that. I don't want to interrupt you, but do you think the training is where it needs to be, or because the officers now, they have so much to choose from that the weapon is now the last thing
Sheriff,
they want to take?
absolutely. And
Okay.
I'll tell you what's happening, and we both know this, and the last thing I want to do is sit here and politicize the death of my deputy.
I agree.
But my deputy was an incredible guy.
Yeah.
He was highly trained.
Okay.
But there have been state laws that have been passed in the last couple of years that have changed the way we do business completely.
Okay.
As you well know, just 2 years ago, anytime a police officer used any kind of force, it was always viewed as being objectionably reasonable. Was it objectionably reasonable? Let's be objective about this.
Mm-hmm.
Was it objectively reasonable that that deputy pulled out his gun to pursue a fleeing felon, a man that we know had stolen an AK-47 and a pistol, a man that had successfully evaded and avoided law enforcement in 3 counties on the shore, and he was wanted up in Baltimore City? They had finally violated him because of the crimes down in Wycomico County, down in Worcester County, down in Somerset County. Baltimore City finally violated him. He was on probation.
Okay.
They finally violated him. As you well know, state law changed 2 years ago. What used to be objectionably reasonable is no longer acceptable in the state of Maryland. It is in most states across the country, but in Maryland, it's no longer acceptable. It's what's viewed as being necessary and proportional.
Okay.
Necessary and proportional. So because this fleeing felon had a backpack on his shoulder when he took off, and he wasn't holding a gun in his hand, I firmly believe that's why my deputy never pulled his gun out and had his taser out. But as we all know, things happen in a split second.
Right.
And as Deputy Hilliard pursued this guy, he pulled his taser out and not his handgun. He'd just been trained in the taser 2 weeks earlier. And as part of the training, we are instructed to warn the suspect that you're going to be tased. And my deputy warned him not once, but 4 times. He was going to be tased if he continued fleeing the deputy's authority for him to stop. And as the deputy closed the distance while hollering, "If you don't stop, I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you," the suspect suddenly stopped. And as he's stopping, he is simultaneously reaching into the backpack, and he turns and he fires 1 round. And that 1 round hit the deputy right there, right in the forehead. Creased the eyebrow right here in the right eye. Creased the eyebrow. He fired 2 more successive shots. 1 hit the deputy in the shoulder, and the 3rd one missed. He dropped my deputy in his tracks, and he executed him. He then went to the deputy's body and we believe he attempted to disarm the deputy. But when the deputy collapsed, we couldn't see exactly what he was doing, but we did see him return. We heard him kicking the deputy to make sure he was deceased, and then he tried to disarm him. Glenn Hilliard died serving Wicomico County to the best of his ability, and he was a rock star.
Yeah.
Instantaneously, he left behind a beautiful wife and 3 gorgeous children. Not to mention, his death devastated our community. Devastated our community. Rock star deputy who left this life way too soon at the age of 42. And we buried him one day before his 43rd birthday.
Wow. And you know, Mike, I wanted you here because, you know, you always hear in the different communities, oh, that never happens here, until it does.
Until it does.
And what I want the citizens of Anne Arundel County to know is that what we do on a daily basis is serious, and it has consequences sometimes, like what happened to your deputy.
Yes, sir.
I think we get a little relaxed. We get a little relaxed, and we start seeing certain politicians, they pass laws and stuff, and we don't think about it. But they have a real impact on our ability to protect the citizens of the jurisdictions that we serve, you know. So that's why I wanted you here. I think we all know of somebody who's been impacted, at least a law enforcement official, we've been impacted by a death. You know, I remember in Prince George's County, and I was thinking about it on my way here. I think that between Prince George's County, Washington, D.C., Montgomery County, and the state police, and I even got to put in Metro Transit Police, we probably averaged a death over my career at least one officer every other year.
Oh,
One
absolutely.
officer every other year.
Absolutely. You know, Sheriff, just this past Monday, I drove up within 10 minutes of where you and I are sitting right now to a special dedication ceremony of a classroom at a clandestine location up in this area for Corporal Ed Totley.
Okay. Yes.
Ed Totley, another beautiful soul that I worked with as a trooper. Ed Totley was a Maryland State Trooper. He was another black Maryland State Trooper who was executed by a thug who was selling dope. Executed Corporal Ed Totley. Ed left behind a beautiful wife and, once again,
Right.
3 children.
Right.
But to be up there with his widow and 2 of his children this week as we dedicated a training classroom to Ed Totley, a beautiful training classroom, because Ed was like me. I love training people. As you well know, I've instructed and trained all over the world.
Right.
I did a class yesterday for the Maryland Highway Safety Office in Ocean City, Maryland. 2.5 hours. Spoke to a bunch of young cops about the importance of staying motivated in this climate. Staying motivated, and that was my topic.
Right.
I spoke for 2.5 hours on staying motivated in this climate because it's hard. Because there are times we feel our lawmakers have turned their backs on us.
Right.
You're a good man. You couldn't care less. You couldn't care less someone's race, gender, ethnicity when
Right.
you walk out this door
Right.
to be a police officer. I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that we have great people that are losing their lives protecting their communities. And we are. But at that dedication this past Monday, I couldn't help but think, what would Ed be doing today if he were here to see this beautiful classroom being dedicated in his honor, in his name,
Right.
with his beautiful widow and his 2 gorgeous now grown children, Daniel and Taylor, there with us on Monday.
Right.
And it was special. It was humbling, but it was a reminder of the dangers we face every day, because right now the rules are no longer adhered to. Anything goes.
Yeah.
Back in our days, being cops working the street,
Right.
doing foot pursuits and chases and protecting our communities,
Yeah.
there were rules.
Right.
There were rules.
Yep.
But the rules are no longer adhered to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rules are no longer adhered to.
Yeah.
The escalation and dramatic increase in violent crime in the state of Maryland and Prince George's County, and as you're seeing, and here in Anne Arundel County, as I see these daily shootings, it's a direct result of laws that are being passed and policies that are being made. And I would love to be able to sit down and talk to these policymakers one-on-one. I would love for them to see the realities of what I'm going to show your command staff when we leave here today.
Yeah.
Because this is what we truly deal with every day. We're humans. We're both humans. And we can sit down and have this dialogue and have this conversation. We got to stop politicizing everything.
You know, when I was running for sheriff in Anne Arundel County, we have blue areas, we have red areas, and stuff like this. And I didn't worry about where I was going.
Nor did you understand it, because I didn't care.
I didn't care either.
I didn't care.
Yep, I did not care. I did not care what your ethnicity was.
No.
Your sexual orientation.
No.
Anything like that.
No.
The only thing I kept saying to people is, this is what I want to do to protect you and your family.
And I need your help to do that.
Yep.
Yes.
There you go. And I think that resonated with a lot of people. It resonated with a lot of people. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about protecting the citizens of our jurisdictions.
Absolutely.
You know,
Who deserve our protection.
who deserve it.
Who need our protection.
Yep.
Who are begging for our protection.
Yep.
You know, that's who we are sworn to protect. That's who we're sworn to serve, and they deserve nothing less.
Right.
Especially these areas that are impoverished, that are historically impoverished.
Yep.
They need us more now than ever.
Yep.
And my relationships with everyone down on the Eastern Shore, especially my impoverished communities, are greater now than they've ever been.
Good, good.
And you know, Sheriff, when Corporal Hilliard was shot and killed that night, and he was promoted posthumously following his execution, one of the first phone calls I made to was one of my pastors, who's a member of the Black Ministerial Alliance. And I called him at 10:40 on a Sunday night. I said, Pastor, I need you. He didn't ask me why, what's going on. He said, where do you want me?
Okay.
I said, I need you up at the PRMC. One of my deputies been shot.
Yeah.
He said, Sheriff, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. He said, Sheriff, I'm so sorry.
Right.
I said, Pastor, I need you. I said, I need you. He said, okay, buddy, I'm on my way. I didn't call his home. I didn't call his business. I called his cell phone.
Right.
They've got my cell phone. I called his cell phone. He said, I'm on my way.
Okay. And that's what it's about. It's about community coming out.
And relationships.
Building relationships. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to give you some good news also. I don't know if I told you this, but we had a deputy that suffered a heart attack, died in the line of duty, and Corporal McCardle. And we've been battling a little bit to get it recognized as a line of duty death. And the memorial wall in D.C., his name will be placed on that.
I'm so glad to hear
so,
that. Congratulations.
Thank you, because I know you were assisting me with that.
Absolutely.
Give me advice on
and
that.
Thank you for your persistence and getting that name on the wall, because he's earned that distinction.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. And I also want to say to his wife and family, because they were really pushing hard for this too. So it wasn't just us here at the sheriff's office. It was his family that pushed forward. So it's finally going to come to fruition, and that'll be next year. So hopefully you can attend.
I will see you there, my friend.
All right. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right. Thank you. And to everybody out there that joined us today, look, this has been a lot of information, but I just want to relay to everybody that what we do, it's a serious business. It has consequences to it. And we need your support, not only for us directly, but we need you to support those individuals who pass laws that protect us and help us to do our job. So to everybody out there, thank you. And as always, look out for one another and be safe.